Hey YouTube, Kiritwig here, bringing you all an update to my Ojama Yugioh deck profile for January 2025. Wanted to update the Ojamas. They actually got some, I would say, quote-unquote related support in the Infinite Forbidden booster set, and I just never actually got around to updating the deck with those cards. They are generic, but they do have the Ojamas on the cards, so it kind of implies with those spell and traps that you can use them quite easily with the different Ojama monsters. So some changes were made to the deck since the last update. There is one card that is missing for the deck, which is Ojama Knight. So I'll show what cards you can replace for Ojama Knight in the extra deck, and also for the instant fusion target if you wanted to run it in the deck before we get started. But as always, let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So for the main deck monsters, we'll start off with our main Ojamas. We decided to go with the 3 of for all of the main Ojamas, just because we are running the new spell card in the deck as well to help with the Ojama setup, and that is the League of Uniform Nomenclature Strikes. So you want to run 3 of all of the normal monsters, so 3 copies of Ojama Yellow, the 3 copies of Ojama Green, and sadly I can only find 2 copies of Ojama Black, so I have 1 Ojama Red as a placeholder, since we are only running 2 Ojama Red normally in the deck, since its card effect is just for the normal summon option. But you do want to run 3 of the original Ojama brothers, so having the 3 of copies for all of these duos definitely will come in handy later on. Another 3 of that we run in the deck is the 3 of copies for Ojama Blue. When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can add 2 Ojama cards from your deck to your hand. It's not a once per turn, and it also can be activated if you were just to crash your Ojama Blue into one of your opponent's monsters. So very useful being able to search out the many different Ojama cards thanks to just this one monster. We can even grab some of our one-ofs that we run in the deck as well, using this card for that added play. And then we're also running the 3 copies of Ojama Pink. If this card is sent from the hand or field to the graveyard, you can activate this effect. Each player draws 1 card, then each player discards 1 card. Then if you discard an Ojama card, you can choose one opponent's unused monster zone, and it cannot be used until the end of your opponent's turn. You can only use this effect of Ojama Pink once per turn, but it works very, very well with the Ojama King, since Ojama King can lock out 3 other zones, and also for the added setup for the special summon power of your Ojama Emperor, being able to have the non-link Ojama special summon for this card, and also being able to send Ojama Pink off of cards like Ojama Country to then gain this additional card effect. For the last of the Ojama monsters, we are running 2 copies of Ojama Red. With this card, when it's normal summon, you can special summon up to 4 Ojama monsters from your hand in attack position. So just a quick way to grab all of the needed Ojama monsters for a true field swarm, whether then you have these resources for your Link 3 Ojama monster, or just for the other extra deck plays that we can also go into with this deck. Red helps to set those cards up, and then you can use cards like blue to be able to add this card from your deck to your hand to go for the normal summon. Now for the spells, we are running 3 field spells, 1 copy of Fusion Recycling Plant, and 2 copies of Ojama Country. Once per turn, you can send 1 Ojama card from your hand to the graveyard to special summon 1 Ojama monster from your graveyard. While this card you control an Ojama monster, switch the original attack and defense of all Ojama, or all monsters on the field. So being able to switch attack and defense means you can get some powerhouses for your Ojama monsters in the deck, while weakening some of your own opponent's monsters. You can have the send for your Ojama Pink to grab another Ojama, and then activate the discard draw of Ojama Pink and the monster zone restriction for this card as well, using that spell. And then Fusion Recycling Plant to be able to grab into our polymerizations for our fusion plays all the easier also. We are running 2 copies of the new spell from Infinite Forbidden, which is the League of Uniform Nomenclature Strikes. With this card being, you target 1 face-up monster you control, equip 2 monsters with the same original name as that target from your hand, deck, and or graveyard to the target as you equip spells. If you do, it cannot attack or be destroyed by battle while equipping those 2 cards. You cannot special summon for the rest of the turn after this resolves, except for monsters with the same original type as that targeted monster. And you can activate 1 the League of Uniform Nomenclature Strikes per turn. This, I would say, is more a defensive capability card, being able to summon out your Ojama monster and then target it with this card. Equip equipping those additional monsters to also thin out the copies in the deck for those monsters and giving you more of a defensive card to use against your opponent and still not being locked out of any of these summon plays you may want to go to. So it acts more as a shield while the other Ojamas in the deck act more as a lockdown. We're running 2 copies of Ojama Magic as well. When this card is sent from the hand or field to the graveyard, add 1 of each, Ojama Green, Ojama Yellow, and Ojama Black from your deck to your hand. So you do have to add 1 of each of the Ojamas, so you can't just add up to. It has to be a mandatory add for all of the Ojama monsters, but still very, very good for, once again, another send search off of Ojama Country to grab these monsters and then have the initial use of them with cards like Ojama Red, or even just the fusion target plays with these cards as well, with the other fusion assisted cards that we run in the deck for our lineup being 2 copies of Fusion Deployment, being able just to reveal the Ojama King in the extra deck and grab any of our Ojama monsters. Can help with the play I mentioned before with Nomenclature Strikes, summoning out our Ojama monster and then activating this card without even taking up our normal summon thanks to it. And then also the 2 copies of Polymerization, searching this card out easier with our Fusion Recycling Plant, and then the main play to go into it obviously would be the Ojama King or the Ojama Knight if we ran it in the deck as well. 2 copies of Painful Decision, another send and setup search for any particular normal Ojama monster from our deck to our hand, with the last of the cards being 2 copies of Foolish Burial Goods. These cards work very, very well with the traps we run the deck, which I'll go over when we get to the actual trap lineup, sending them to set them up in the graveyard to use, with the last of the spells being the 1 copy of Ojama Delta Hurricane. Now this card especially can be a great tech choice add for when we go over the traps, which I'll explain that combo as well. 1 Monster Reborn, and then the 1 Terraforming to grab the needed field spell we want for our particular play. For the traps, running 2 copies of 3-in-1. During your opponent's end phase, if your opponent has more total cards in their hand and field than you have in your hand and field, special summon 3 normal monsters from your graveyard, and you can banish this card from your graveyard to target 3 monsters you control with different original names, and set 1 spell or trap from your hand or deck that mentions the original names of all 3 targets. So there's a very fun play you can do with this, and the Ojama deck is meant to, really invest your Ojama monsters for your fusion setup. So there's a good chance with 3-in-1 that you will be lower in count for cards against your opponent. So you'll be able to set up your Ojamas and the added card, which is our Ojama Delta Hurricane, to then use against our opponents. And then we also have, for the last of the 1-ofs for the traps, 1 Ojama Duo. It's another send target off of Foolish Burial Goods, giving you the banish option to special summon 2 Ojama monsters with different names from your deck to the field, the 1 Goes in Match, and the 1 Rivalry of Warlord. Since we are running all light monsters in the main deck and all beast monsters, both of these cards can just help to restrict our opponent while not really hurting us in any way, aside from a few extra deck targets. For the actual extra deck, we're running 2 copies of Ojama King. With this card, choose up to 3 of your opponent's unused monster zones. Those zones cannot be used. So once again, this card just restricts your opponent for what they can use. You can't choose the extra monster zone, obviously, but the main monster zones that you can target for your opponent means that they have less to work with thanks to this card. If we use Ojama Pink in combination with it, then even less to be able to go into as well. And then also the 1 copy of First of the Dragons and the 1 Garura, Wings of Resonant Life. If you wanted to run Ojama Knight, you could take out either the First of the Dragons or the Garura, and then the additional spot being maybe the Painful Choice for just a 1-of count, along with the 1 instant fusion to be able to go into Ojama Knight with just that card. And also for the Link monsters, 2 copies of Ojama Emperor. While Ojama Country is in the field zone, this card gains 3,000 attack. It cannot be destroyed by card effects, and your opponent takes any battle damage you would have taken from attacks of this card instead. You can target 1 non-Link Ojama monster in your graveyard, special summon it, and for the rest of this turn, you cannot special summon from the extra deck except for fusion monsters. So the main play with that fusion monster is obviously to grab your Ojama King onto the field and have the attack boost of Emperor, while your Ojama King provides lockdown for your opponent's zones. We're also running the 1 copy of IP Masquerena, 1 SP Little Knight, along with the 1 copy of Alina the Light Charmer Illustrious, 1 Tri-Brigade Farragut, with our bigger Link boss monsters being the 1 Nightmare Unicorn and the 1 Axis Code Talker, with our Xyz monsters being the 1 copy of number 64, the 1 Gigantic Sprite, and the 1 Sky Cavalry Centauria for the Xyz monsters rank 2s that we can go into as well. And then as for some of the go-to plays in the deck, we mentioned before that the one fun setup that you can do with the new 3-in-1 trap revolves around using polymerization, whether you use cards like your Ojama to add the Ojama trio from your deck to your hand. So having these Ojamas in your hand is your main go-to setup to then resolve your 3-in-1. So you'll activate polymerization. Investing 3 monsters in your hand will definitely, dwindle down your resources. For then you have your Ojama King. Let's just say this was your opening hand with these 5 cards, and then you have the Ojama King. Not only are you limiting your opponent for those 3 monster zones, you then set the 3-for-1 on the field, and then at the end of your opponent's turn, with this card being able to activate, your opponent should have more cards, hopefully, than the 2 you potentially have in your hand as well. And then special summon 3 normal monsters from your graveyard, so then you can grab your 3 Ojama monsters back as well. And since it's not a limitation for this card as well, being able to banish this card, you can set the 1 spell or trap with from your hand or deck that mentions all the original named targets. So then you can use this card to grab your Ojama Delta Hurricane, setting this card on the field. So then the following turn, you can activate Ojama Delta Hurricane, controlling all of the Ojama monsters, and then being able to destroy all the cards your opponent potentially set up on the field to use against you. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoy. I always love updating the Ojama deck. It's just a fun, silly little deck used by Chaz in the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX anime. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And Kira Twig out.